If there's no further questions for officers, it will be my intention to take a mover and seconder and then to allow a debate. I noticed a couple of members have indicated they do wish to make a contribution in the debate on the policy. Any further questions for officers? Councillor Stallard.
Well, maybe for all of us, just how we accommodate those minor changes that we discussed, whether that needs to be noted via the resolution or not.
Yeah. Can we have a crack? My understanding was you would like a little bit more around the last paragraph of 6.5, Councillor Stallard. And that just says council reserves the right to disconnect devices or disable services.
It could just say from council services or council systems.
Reserves the right to disconnect devices or disable services or disable, what was your suggested wording?
Systems. From disable, probably you remove services and disable council from council systems.
From the council system. Is that sufficient to satisfy you, Councillor Stallard?
Would you be able to just read it out quickly again?
So the revised wording is suggested council reserves the right to disconnect devices or disable them from the council system. That's okay?
Thank you.
That sorts that one. So we're going to incorporate that in the wording. Were there any others, Councillor Stallard? No. That being the case, I'm happy to move from the chair the adoption of the members' reimbursement and expenses policy as updated after their remuneration. Councillor Sanson is happy to second. In making some quick comment, thank you to officers for their report and work on this. I would note that there will be a separate decision for the new council on how the pool of remuneration will be allocated. In the latest decision of the Remuneration Authority, it sets the pool. It is most appropriate that that is done by the new council. The second change that is both disappointing but I think necessary is that the Remuneration Authority for the first time has specifically made an allocation for security provision for members. It is a rather sad commentary that society has become so polarised that there are members who serve in local government who have faced threats. And I think it is to the credit of the Remuneration Authority that they have made specific provision for councils to be able to provide security cameras or other devices to make sure that elected members are provided safely. I'm hoping with the Chief Executive that there will not necessarily be needed in our community. Overall, I find the Nelson community that 99.9% of people, even when they strongly disagree with you, are quite respectful. But I also think it's appropriate we incorporate it in the policy as just a bit of realism about the age in which we live in. Yes, there has been some amendments. I felt the Chief Executive has been quite tolerant of the suggestions from members, but I do share the Chief Executive's view that the preference is for elected members to use a council-provided device, just because I think it makes it so much easier for backup and for managing the sort of risks in cybersecurity. Other contributions? Pete, Councillor Rainey, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I know it's not part of this recommendation, it doesn't fall under the global stance that this recommendation covers, but I do think it would be appropriate in the new term for council to give some consideration to the kind of things that I was discussing regarding KiwiSaver, etc. Because one of the things that we should be trying to do, and this is for the whole country to give consideration to, is to encourage young people to want to stand for council. I was 47 when I first sat around this table. I can't tell you how old I am now. I don't even know how old I am, but it's not 48. I'll tell you that for a fact. If I'd known then that I was going to be sitting here 18 years later, I would have thought probably a little bit more differently about things. I still think that it's highly inappropriate that councillors aren't allowed to get access to KiwiSaver contribution and allowed to get access to health insurance. There's various things that could be put in place that would make a significant difference. The fact that you can claim mileage on your car, but not claim health insurance or KiwiSaver, it's out of kilter as far as I'm concerned. It's time for the conversation to be had. You know, and I do absolutely recognise that a councillor's remuneration for some people in our community would be a game-changing amount of money. I really do understand that. And there are others who acknowledge that being a councillor is only a part-time position. And we get treated relatively well by council. We could do with a nicer councillors' lounge, one that could actually fit the councillors would be good. All of the councillors at once would be quite a rare move. But I just think it's time that this organisation had a bit of a think about these things. And I realise that it may well be a national conversation, but we could do the right thing and kick it off.
Thanks, Councillor Rainey. Any other contributions?
Just to say,
Councillor Bench.
I second what Councillor Rainey raises. I won't discuss it further. But
Thanks, Councillor Skinner. The floor is Councillor Bench.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. I'm not sure about this. Your comment that we shouldn't have anything to do with setting our remuneration, I think is correct. I'd ask this question, that this council's been here for 150 years, and if they were over that time been setting their own remuneration, do you think it'd be more or less? I think it'd be more. So I don't know that it's appropriate for us to get involved in that. Clearly, I'm not going to be involved in it, but I don't really agree that we should be getting involved in that side of something. I think there's a good reason for it not to be how it is right now.
Thanks, Councillor Bench. The Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, just on your comments, Councillor Rainey, we wouldn't be kicking off the conversation. This has been a conversation that's been ongoing for decades, particularly in the last 6 years. LGNZ and particularly the Young Elected Members Network have had near continuous engagement on the fact that there are just some really basic things that make being an elected member far less accessible, that only apply to our special relationship, not the special relationship of members of parliament or ministers, but only the special relationship that councillors have to their council, and KiwiSaver being the obvious one. There is opportunities, and I think we shouldn't miss when the Remuneration Authority seeks feedback, not on the remuneration itself, but on the formula it uses to calculate, because it is really important that the setting of pay is separate. But what I think that even the Remuneration Authority would accept is that that formula hasn't kept up with the changing complexity of local government, particularly for those medium and smaller councillors. When you look at remuneration levels for your metropolitan centres, they are very, very comfortable. But when you get into this sort of middle stratus is where you get some really disproportionate and strange outcomes from hours worked to honorarium provided, and that balance between responsibilities and the support provided. And so it is something that the opportunity comes around for councils to engage in. And I think it is something that councils should take a proactive role, not in saying we should be paid more, but saying, is the formula for calculating how much remuneration is allocated based on council size, on deprivation index, on geographic area, is that still correct? And I would note that it does seem to be that unitary authorities, because they're lumped in with Auckland, all of the rest of them end up with a pretty bad deal as a result of not wanting to pay Auckland councillors an absolutely exorbitant amount of cash.
Thanks for those contributions. Any others? I'm not sure that I'm Pete.
Well, of clarification, because this may well get reported, I want to make it extremely clear I'm not advocating that councillors be able to set their own remuneration. It's
understood.
absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that councillors should be able to enjoy the same kind of benefits that anybody in the workforce should have an equal opportunity of going for, i.e. the access to be able to contribute to Kiwi. Well, I guess we can contribute to KiwiSaver, but they have an employee contribution to KiwiSaver and potentially to health insurance. Is that clear?
A little bit indulgent in the sense that you're already spoken, but in the spirit of goodwill, are perfectly appropriate comments. Before we put the resolution in, my right to reply, acknowledge the work that officers have done. There have been fair contributions from members. I just remain of the view consistent with Councillor Benj, and that is that it is entirely appropriate and right that we have a separate remuneration authority, as Councillor Rainey reinforced, albeit in this day and age where there is huge concern about how we are going to manage as a country the significant increase in the number of retirement people, it does seem an anomaly that elected councillors cannot access to KiwiSaver, and that is an issue that is fair for us to draw to the attention of the Remuneration Authority, not in terms of making a decision ourselves. I'm going to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, say no. Good to get that piece of business resolved. I'm going to we'll be going for an hour and a half. We're going to be indulgent because the agenda is quite slim, and have a 10-minute coffee break till 1:40. Council resumes at 1:40. the extension of the alcohol ban under our urban environment bylaw at Trafalgar Park. Welcome Mandy, Claire, and can I especially welcome Sergeant Steve Savage. I have had a huge number of community responses to the problems in this area, and can I say both to the police and to the council staff appreciate the work that has gone into trying to find an additional tool for us to be able to manage some of the antisocial behaviour there. I ask Claire to present the report. If Steve would like to then make any comments about it, and then I'll open up for questions from elected members. In your good hands, Claire.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. The report is in front of you today. It's fairly self-explanatory. We've done quite a lot of work seeking feedback in relation to the issues for this area with the police support and with other parts of council, and I wish to thank them for a really cross-council review of this area. Multiple areas of council are involved in this. Parks, events, the facilities team and the like. So this has been a really great example of a cross-council approach to considering an issue concerning with disorder in the area. I think it's pretty self-explanatory and I'm just open to any questions.
Steve, did you want to make any comments on behalf of police and the work that you've done with our council officers to be able to provide you guys with some additional tools?
I can certainly provide a background to the liquor ban. I joined the police in Nelson before we had liquor bans, and I can assure the council that Nelson, our parks and CBD, is a far better place for having it. It's really improved the behaviour of people and reduced a significant amount of offences. This area in particular has been quite high profile, right beside our premier sporting venue. And anecdotally, a lot of members of the public have been very supportive of us working in the area. So we're really grateful to get this far with it. Happy to answer any questions at all.
Thank you. Can I just trigger off the first question? There is a bus stop on Trafalgar Street adjacent to the old East Stand. That is one of the areas that I have had the complaints. Can I just check when I look on page 66 of the agenda and the proposed prohibition of alcohol, can I be reassured that it does cover the area of the bus stop? I'm just concerned about where's the road reserve, the boundary of the park, where's the boundary of the centre of the road, where technically is the alcohol ban going to be in respect of the bus stop on that bottom end of Trafalgar Street?
Kia ora, thank you, Mayor Nick. That is correct. It will include that area to the edge of the footpath.
The edge of the footpath.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Councillor Brand, then Councillor Skinner.
Determining to mute me today.
Yes.
I just have
Conspiracy from the mayor.
I have two clarifying questions. The first one is just how the proposed alcohol ban extension around the Trafalgar Park interacts with the existing on licence for the Trafalgar Centre, because I'm keen to ensure that there's no unintended overlap, especially for events that may span both venues or use shared access points, and that clear coordination and public messaging would help to avoid any confusion of attendance and enforcement teams. And then I've got a second question.
Kia ora, through the chair. The current provisions still stand. There is no conflict.
Okay, that's good to hear. And my second one is just to confirm the proposed alcohol ban extension around the Trafalgar Park as outlined in the Urban Environments Bylaw update applies only during public events, and could we qualify what is a public event in the context? Does it include informal gatherings or only formal organised activities? I'd also appreciate reassurance that the policy isn't intended as a general restriction affecting individuals who may present in the area outside of event times, particularly for those from our most vulnerable communities.
Through the chair, with regards to the first part of your question, no, it should be fine. It's currently operated, it's working well. With regards to enforcement of it, I will hand that over to the police.
So can you repeat the question in regards to you're asking specifically about the vulnerable people drinking there? Oh,
Yeah, so that was the second part. I just want reassurance that the policy isn't intended as a general restriction affecting those individuals who may be present in the area outside of event times, particularly those from our vulnerable communities.
So no one coming or going from events or around those times. That's not the issue. The reason we've asked for the alcohol ban is for the informal gatherings there, which are happening sometimes up to 15 hours a day,
Okay.
drinking.
So those informal times go back to part A of that question. What do we define as a public event? What is qualified? Is it just the formal gatherings and organised activities, or are there informal activities?
So through the chair, just seeking clarification, are you referring to events that have a licence as opposed to a standard council function,
Yeah.
approved function and event?
It just says in the policy here, it's defined as a public event. But public event, are we talking formal organised activities, or are we also including those informal activities that don't, and then they do end up having a breach of the...
Yes. Through the chair, it's referred to as formal.
Okay. Councillor Skinner, then Councillor Rollo.
Thank you for that. Just report's very good. If you're able to look at page 65 to 66, it's got the maps outlining, and I assume is what we've currently got. 66, what is currently got in the pink, and then on previous page 65, I'll give you a chance to, is what you are recommending. So currently it's the 9 till 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. and it excludes that area of the pavilion. And so now that would include the pavilion. How's that all work? So for Joe Blogg's understanding, how's it going to work when you've got an event up there?
My reading of it is that the pavilion is excluded.
Sorry, I'm asking officers here. So you've got circled in the previous one, so that assume it doesn't come under that ban, and in the and what you're recommending has no circle around the building. Can you clarify what's that? Chief.
Through the chair, there is no change to that component.
I see.
So
Yep.
that remains as current.
So in the previous it was, it's included inside that. So previous it's circled around it, meaning it excluded at 9 to 7, but now it's including the pavilion.
Correct.
So it's like for the layperson, how does that work when they're wanting to sell alcohol? It's because they get a license separately and that overrides any blanket.
Yes,
Yeah.
through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah, and you can imagine when I first got the report, I had some concerns about it, and then after had a good chat with the councillor here, he explained where he was coming from, and I could empathise greatly with that. And a bit of feedback: will this not just move that problem on? I know that you're fighting an issue there, and this will be a great tool, but will that just move a problem somewhere else?
That's always the risk. The problem at Trafalgar Park arose from us policing Anzac Park correctly. Anzac Park 2 years ago was a very different place to what it is now. The liquor ban policing that we did in that area has effectively pushed the people over to the Trafalgar Centre. So yes, there's always a risk of them moving elsewhere. Whereabouts, we don't know, and we have to deal with problems as they arise.
My encouragement would be that if they do move to another area and cause the same sort of problems that you described here, that you do just as you do and work with our council officials to help give you the tools to get on top of it. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Sorry, so I'll just say, just following that, and this has been a recent issue. Have we had this issue in the past? I know when you've looked at other areas, it hasn't been a substantial reason to make changes, and I'm of the view of try not to overall with a sledgehammer, but I see the challenge they're having. You've done a great job in moving what's happening in the city centre. This has just been a recent, I know what's happening in the city centre. This has been a growing problem. Was it something that we've battled in the past and found solutions? I know in the past, within the 80s or so forth, in events there'll be issues with cathedral steps or at the parks, but this is quite a cultural, that's quite a social change.
It's an ongoing problem. It has changed a wee bit. The liquor ban in the CBD was largely created for youth when it first came in, and people sideloading and preloading from the Bridge Street bars. The issue in the park has always been this type of crowd. They don't drink in the bars so much, they drink in public places. So it has moved around. Previously, we've extended Wigsdale Park and the Kerr Street Reserve. That's been added on to the liquor ban extension areas over time. So this is a further step.
And very last question, and it helps public understand, why is a 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. not achieve what you're trying to do? People drinking during a day or hanging out in places.
Yeah, so currently it's 9 p.m. till 7 a.m. The problem is at the moment they're drinking from 9 a.m. until dark. So they're sitting there drinking all day, causing problems with people that are using the park and the reserves, walkways for recreational purposes.
In the evenings and
not so much in the evenings. They're all day drinking now, so they tend to leave knowing that the liquor ban's coming into force at 9 p.m. We don't find them there after 9. It's during the day when there's a current gap in the liquor ban around that area.
okay, thank you. Very good. Cheers for that.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. I'm going to be supporting this, but I've got some questions. The consultation, were the guys spoken to?
I've got quite a good relationship with them. I know them all by first name. I know all their personal circumstances. And for a while, they agreed to behave and go somewhere else. Initially, they were sitting on a small seat by the river. Their numbers have grown, sometimes up to 20, and their behaviour has got worse. And now they've sort of moved closer to the band hall and the car park. So I have spoken to them. I speak to them probably 4 times a week currently.
Kind of for staff, so we did community consultation, but were they part of the community?
Through the chair, not that I'm aware of, because that relationship is held with the police and them.
Yeah. And I was also wondering, so people may apply for an exemption for low risk activity. I'm guessing that would exclude those guys if they wanted to have a gathering there, I don't know, between 11 and 4 on a Wednesday.
Through the chair, that's a process that we would review that application when that comes in.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Rollo.
Thank you, and good afternoon, team. Will you be able to touch just quickly? I saw somewhere in the report around the Marsden cricket ground, and that's obviously now not going to have the ban. Are you able to touch on the reasons why you've spoken about that area and then left it off?
Through the chair, our property team, alongside the New Zealand Police, were made aware of some concerns in that area and sought to also review that area as part of this process. Upon looking at the evidence, it didn't quite meet the evidential test under the Local Government Act in relation to increase of crime and disorder relating to alcohol consumption over time. So it's kind of looking at the best tool to resolve the matter. And so I did say in the report that we would give a verbal update, and I'm pleased to say that we've had a meeting with the New Zealand Police, and they are happy to support a community discussion in that area, along with other areas as they come up, to look at issues over time and what might be the best tool to use. It might not be a bylaw, it might be some other tools that the community can also use. So we're just working with them on that.
Just one final question. When an applicant applies for a licence through the DLC, does it make it more difficult for them if the area's under a alcohol ban, or does it simply how's that perceived with the DLC? I'm not a member of that, so I can't comment. But does it make it more difficult for them, and does it give those that are wanting to oppose greater reason to oppose it?
I can speak directly to that. I'm the Alcohol Harm Reduction Officer, so all the special licence applications come over my desk. I can absolutely say it has no bearing. So currently for example, rugby in the Trafalgar Park, get a special licence for the Marcos games, which sometimes go after 9 o'clock. There's never any issues. We don't have an issue with the organised events. It's the informal antisocial gatherings that we have the problem with. So, yeah, I'd like to reassure you of that.
Any further questions from colleagues? That being the case, I'm going to move from the chair resolutions 1 to 5. Thank our officers, and the deputy, Tim Skinner is happy to second the resolution. In speaking to it, the behaviour that has been occurring in this area is totally unacceptable and is the antithesis of what we want in a warm and friendly city. The number of times I've been down there and seen personally some pretty appalling behaviour. When I hear that you've got rugby volunteers that have been assaulted, older women having been spat at, the graffiti, the fires that have been lit with supermarket trolleys, people behaving in intimidating behaviour and shouting out gang slogans, all of the things that are in our report. This council needs to be absolutely firm and lock solid with our police in making our city as safe as possible. Myself and the Chief Executive and a number of councillors on Monday attended the memorial to Senior Sergeant Lynn Fleming. And the emotion of that event was a reminder of how our council needs to work hand in hand with police to make our city safe. So often, the violence that occurs in our city is related to both drug and alcohol abuse, and the preventative approach of extending the alcohol ban to this area, I think, is going to be a practical measure that enables our police to be able to get on top of this problem before it gets out of hand. I also note that the Nelson City Brass Band has had their building graffitied, and a number of their members have felt quite threatened. The last point I would make is that this council, well before my time, has made a massive investment in making the pedestrian access adjacent to our river a very special place. And I think there is a very strong level of commitment, both in council and community, to enable our people to be able to enjoy that riverfront and to be able to recreate there. And there is nothing worse and more off-putting for people that are going for a walk, going for a bike ride, out with the children, to have the sort of threatening and intimidating behaviour. And even though it is on just this one stretch of the river walk, it actually is a discouragement for people to use the complete river walk. It would not surprise me that after passing this bylaw, it is possible that the disruptive group move to another area. And I say to them, if you do, I'll be recommending that we follow it up with making such behaviour as difficult as possible in our city. I think our city needs to act with a hard head, but also a soft heart. And I'm all for the work that Steve Stiles and other members of our staff are doing with the mailroom to provide support, to provide transitional housing as the other part of the equation that we need to do in taking on these antisocial problems. I have to say to the Chief Executive that I am delighted that there is such a close working relationship between our council regulatory team and police in this desire to make Nelson as safe as possible. And my ambition is for it to be the safest and most enjoyable city anywhere in New Zealand. Councillor Skinner.
Yeah, I echo your commentary there, me and Nick. I just want to thank the work of Community Sergeant Steve Savage and his team, and they've made a huge difference. And as you can see, they can only work as well as we support them as a council and a CBD, support them. And there's begging and then there's begging. And unfortunately, I've caught people there, they're out there begging, but all they're doing is redistributing drugs. And I've caught people giving them or selling them drugs to redistribute, and I've given her a real bloody telling off, and to leave the area. And as I would say to them, and as I'd done, speaking to the CBD businesses, they can't act proactively like that, because as soon as they give them a kick up the bum or tell them what the hell you're doing, they get a reaction of whether a shop's kicked in or so forth. So it really relies on us, as we have been in recent weeks and months, working closely with the police force, working closely with our CBD. And I actually ask our CEO to consider what bylaws in the future term that we may be able to put in there, because the police can only do what they can see. And with our begging bylaws in place or not in place, there's humanitarian issues, but it's this being abused far too much, and it's scaring people off from coming into town, and it's scaring businesses off, and protection of their employees. And it was very good of the museum when they raised to us firsthand their concerns, and it reinforced concerns I'd raised earlier on the back of our Sergeant Steve Savage there. So, and discussions on how else we can further dissuade that sort of behaviour of drug selling. I ask that we further look at an appropriate time in the next term, early next term, on our bylaws on that. I know there's a humanitarian reasons we tolerate certain things, but they've just been used and abused. And now we've been seeing people from outside of the area coming in to abuse that situation. And it's really hardens me. I know the police force and many of the various agencies know each of the people firsthand, but Nelson was getting a bit of a reputation. And I, as much as I was quite defensive early on in what this bylaw we're putting in, but I fully support it on better understanding it now. And I think, like you said, Nick, it's got to be a strong signal that if you just think that you come here, cause that behaviour, and you think you'll just move on to the next spot, we will chase them up quicker than they can move. Thank you.
Councillor Rainey.
I support this. But just want to point out, I've spent a lot of time in this area working with the brass band, shifting equipment before and after concerts, sometimes quite late at night, probably 100 times over the last 8 or so years, in and out of that area, a lot. And I have seen a lot of behaviour which certainly fits in with the pattern of what's been talked about here. I'm only going to get this opportunity once, and I have to say it. Our relationship with alcohol in this area is something that needs constant observation by us as a group of elected members, because I have seen terrible behaviour in regards to alcohol consumption that have come from premises that we allow alcohol to be consumed. You know, I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to, it's another debate. But I just want to say our relationship with alcohol as a society isn't in this kind of area, public park area, is not just contained to those who drink during the daytime hours. And I think we need to think about that in the long term.
Thanks, Councillor Rainey. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. Yeah, what Councillor Rainey said. I'm very supportive, like the behaviour is horrific and this is the right thing to do. I'm not so much, I feel that they're being massively othered. And I understand that, you know, maybe they wouldn't engage in consultation or co-construction of something, but we're just smashing them again, send them somewhere else, and you're going to get worse behaviour, I believe. I saw this, I consulted, I went down this morning, had to talk to them. It's not hard, you can ask me, I'll do it for you. I go down there quite a bit as well, because I know a lot of the guys, so they're sons and dads. They tell me about their kids. They'll tell me what waka they are. They're from, what region. Tell me all about their family. We've got artists. It's all trauma informed. And again, I'm very supportive of the ban, but I don't think the process is very good. They've been excluded from consultation and what we have here. Yeah, so they're out of the process. I can't see this being positive as far as how we deal with these men and women, people. And I understand that, you know, look at the Bill of Rights. Yeah, I get it. We need to, when it's working well, it's kind of nice down there when they're gathering and chatting and having a good time. And I wish we could get together and figure out a way that they can have that kind of connection without the horrible stuff. And like I said, we could try and it wouldn't work, but not trying bothers me. So very supportive, but I don't think we're doing a great job.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Rollo?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Nick. I welcome this. I was just last weekend, 2 weekends ago, down at the Tahuna Beach beach cleanup, and the amount of empty alcohol bottles that people were returning to the bins to be recycled. It was pretty sad to see in an area that a lot of people go, families go, the amount of alcohol that had been found in the bushes. And I know that that's one particular area, but what we see in a city area as well is getting worse. And I think we should welcome the news from Marlborough this week on the new local alcohol policy that they're going to be bringing in. And I know TDC in the last few weeks have also updated their alcohol policy. And I recall when we were going through the issue around the alcohol advertising of cricket, and Health New Zealand acknowledged to council that our policies in this area really needed refreshing. And whoever's around this table in a couple of weeks, I really hope that this can be the priority, because the only way we're going to help conquer this ongoing issue we have of alcohol harm in this community is by being at the front of it, and that's the role that council have to play in this. And so that's something that I hope is a strong priority, and acknowledge the work that the police are doing in this area as well.
Thanks, Councillor Rollo. Any further contributions? That being the case, I won't exercise my right to reply, and I'll put resolutions 1 to 5. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, say no. I declare that carried. We come to item 7.4, bringing Plan Change 29 into operative, and welcome Mandy, Mithran and Sam. Welcome. We're all ears, Mandy. Happy for yourself or your other officers, Mithran, to just take us through the report briefly and respond to questions.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. Basically this is a procedural step in the process to make people make our plan rules very clear to people who use our plan rules about what are the rules that are in place now. And Mithran will just remind you about what Plan Change 29 changes are.
Kia ora, Mayor Nick and councillors. Thank you, Mandy. The purpose of this report is to seek council's final approval to make the non-appeal parts of Plan Change 29 operative on the 21st of October. The purpose of Plan Change 29 was to introduce flexibility in relation to housing policies and rules, and to also better manage natural hazard and heritage. Plan Change 29 was notified in August of 2023. It then went through its submission and further submission stages. Council then appointed a hearing panel to hear and make decisions on submissions. Hearings were held in August and September of last year. Earlier this year, Council received the hearing panel recommendations on Plan Change 29. At a high level, the hearing panel determined that significant parts of Plan Change 29 not be approved. This included all the residential intensification provisions. The panel, however, recommended that several important components of Plan Change 29 be approved. This included extending the inner city fringe zone southwards along Vanguard and Vincent Streets to replace the industrial zone that applies in that location. The city fringe zone will enable a wide range of activities, for example, residential, commercial, and mixed use. Maximum building heights in the city center and city fringe zone were increased from the current 15 to 20 meters to 24 meters, which will enable a 6 to 7 story typology. I note that the height limit is reduced for properties within the cathedral view shaft and for those that are adjacent to a heritage precinct. A new framework to manage the design and layout of buildings and substantial alterations to existing buildings was also approved. These changes will also enable residential units within the city center and city fringe zones. Updates to flood, fault, liquefaction, hazard mapping, and associated rules were also approved. All in all, these changes will better enable development around the city center, including for housing and other development types, which will contribute to city revitalization and growth. These changes will also enable better management of land in relation to natural hazards. In June this year, Council accepted the panel's recommendations on Plan Change 29. The decision to accept the panel's recommendation was then subject to appeal until 23rd July. One appeal was lodged with the Environment Court. The main focus of the appeal is on the decision to decline the introduction of the medium density residential zone, general residential zone, and associated provisions. The scope of the appeal is curtailed to aspects of the plan change that were rejected by Council. This means that the provisions approved by Council in June are beyond challenge and not subject to any further change. These rules are now treated as operative, that is, they have full legal weight, and any corresponding rule treated as inoperative when making planning decisions in accordance with the Resource Management Act. While a part of the plan change that you rejected is subject to appeal, the Resource Management Act provides the ability for Council to make the non-appeal parts operative from now onwards. The options in front of you are approve and make operative the non-appeal parts of Plan Change 29 now, or do nothing until the appeal is resolved, after which Council then approves and makes operative the non-appeal parts of Plan Change 29, as well as any other changes to the appeal provisions resulting from the Environment Court. I recommend that Council approve and make operative the non-appeal parts of Plan Change 29 now. Making the non-appeal provisions operative is a procedural step. It completes the plan change process and ensures that the Nelson Resource Management Plan is clear and certain for plan users and implementers. In addition, it is consistent with your duty under the RMA to avoid unreasonable delay when exercising your functions. In terms of the appeal, if the appeal is withdrawn or unsuccessful, no further decision is required. However, if the appeal is successful in some way, a further decision of Council will be required. I'll take the rest of the report as read, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I've got a couple, and then I'll get from other members, and it's just about fully understanding it. Is officers' view that the making those portions of Plan 29 operative, does it in any way impact on the subsequent mediation and appeal process on the remaining parts? In other words, when the judge sits down and makes a decision on the appeal, does the fact that Council has made those portions of Plan Change 29 that have been agreed operative, does it any subtle or other way impact on the decision on the appeal?
Short answer is no. The RMA is pretty clear. The scope of the appeal is curtailed to certain aspects. What you're making operative, what you're deciding whether you make operative today, has been through submissions and has not had any appeal on it. So these provisions are already treated as operative. What's appealed will not have an effect on what you're deciding today.
Sure, thank you for that. The second part of my question is this. In the pink area on page 77 that is currently industrial, And we are now allowing residential development up to the height of 24 metres. The bit I'm interested in, and I'm sorry it's a bit nerdy, is that you've got a number of industrial activities in that area that will have existing use rights from those activities. As a consequence of the zoning changing to residential and now going to 8-storey, does that impact on any new industrial activity that someone might wish to pursue in that area between Vanguard and St Vincent Street? I'm not wanting to change the decision. I'm just wanting to understand in advance as to what is the impact of that pink area becoming blue and going from industrial to residential. And I accept it will not change any existing use rights. Does it change the consideration by council officers of any new industrial activity in that area?
So Plan Change 29 has a new framework, both for city fringe and inner city, requiring a consent for new buildings. Through the expert conferencing stages, we work closely with planners representing developers in that area. The result of that was that existing industrial activities, when they're substantially altering or adding to their building framework, are provided with a more enabling pathway, meaning that they will be able to continue to operate while this transition occurs.
But for new activities, just to add to that, for new industrial activities, they would need a resource consent will be more difficult because it is industrial activity in a city fringe zone, so it's now not in the right zone for it.
My expectation, and tell me if I've got this wrong, is that over the next 50, 100 years, we're expecting that portion to effectively switch from being industrial to being high intensity residential. Am I getting it correct?
As well as business. There will still be commercial things on the ground floor is what we expect as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Sansom.
I'm just signalling I'm happy to move whenever ready.
Sure. Any other questions from colleagues? Councillor Skinner.
I thank you for bringing it to us and explaining that. I see obviously this challenge in Environment Court is just throwing things out of kilt. And I know you've given me good answers and staff have given me good answers, but for the understanding of the public, there's a real nervousness in regards to it's gone to Environment Court, and it's seen by some that we are stepping back and not holding firm the decision we as councillors have made unanimously, the decision that the commissioners have made unanimously, and the feedback from, understandably, from the public saying, well, why aren't you guys defending or opposing the challenge in the Environment Court? If you're happy to answer, I know it's a sensitive period of time and I'm happy to give my position, and I strongly support what we as councillors and the commissioners, and which was very much a voice and reflection of the public's concern of what was an overreach, and brought down to what I think is a very sound decision. And this what's being challenged is taking it back to, in my view, an overreach. But can I have an answer from the CEO officer on that? I know you're following process, so that's not a disrespect from me, but we're getting that, hey, why aren't our council organisation defending position of what the community have voiced?
So through the chair, that will be the council's position going into mediation, is we're there to defend the decision made by council, but we're also there to listen to the issues raised through the appeal, and with an open mind to see if there could be some way of resolving the appeal without going to the Environment Court. But whatever happens through mediation, it will come back to council for direction.
Thank you, and that's your assurance I know you've given, but publicly people don't see all those discussions and good advice that you've given us. So you're basically, this will come out, I'm not sure what the time scale is. It will be maybe a similar different council, and before anything, any compromises or anything that may go against the decision, that the public, when I say the public, what I felt the commissioners had reflected the greater public view, that would be something that would come to us before any sort of compromise, before any sort of change in what we had voted on.
Thanks, councillor.
Any sort of time? Was it too much crystal ball gazing on the time?
Mediation is set for, I know 8th of December is one of the dates. There's 3 dates of that week. So that's when it starts.
Early December is the first.
And just put everything on ease, we would be utilising our legal skills and resources to defend the position that the public have decided on previously.
That's our starting position, but we're there to listen to the issues raised.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor Nick, and thank you for your presentation. Is there any great urgency to progress this at this point? Because, natural justice and fairness tells me that perhaps we should wait until the appeal has been processed. Remembering that our sisters and brothers in the TDC are supporting the appeal. So just to answer that, please.
So through the chair, the decision before you today does not impact what happens in the appeal, or the appeal does not impact what is before you today. So there is no impact that way. It does make it a lot easier for people when they're thinking about development on a particular property to have a look at our plan and then figure out what is the right rule that they're looking at. At the moment, they've got 2 different rules that could apply, and they have to work out which one is right. So this decision simply has the one rule there so that they can see it clearly, what applies.
Councillor Sanson.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, through the chair. Kia ora, thanks for the report. Just wanting to clarify, if we adopt this today, this will be enabling of more intensification in the inner city, so it will make it easier to have kind of housing and that kind of thing in the inner city. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Thanks.
If there are no further questions, I understand Councillor Sanson is happy to move the 2 recommendations for making Plan Change 29 operative. I'm happy to second that from the chair. If there are no further questions from officers, can I thank them for their work in bringing this to our attention, and now allow a debate on the recommendations. Councillor Sanson, did you wish to speak as the mover?
Just to say that I feel that this aspect of the plan change really goes hand in hand with Bridge to Better and the infrastructure upgrades and our, I think, kind of unanimous aspirations at council to try to see more housing in the inner city, all kinds of housing. So I'm really supportive of this and just want to thank the staff for all their work, and also the hearing panel members who I think had a pretty, it was a pretty tough time. So just want to formally acknowledge you two as well, those of you that sit around this table. That's it.
Thanks, Councillor Sanson. Any other contributions? I'll take Councillor Rainey, then Councillor Courtney.
Thanks, Mayor. And I'm glad that we're able to make this progress today. On reflection on the whole process of Plan Change 29, it was obviously a difficult time for many in the community to come on board with the process that council was putting out there, and I acknowledge that. And at the time, having experienced some of the concern from the community, and even taking that into account, I felt personally relatively comfortable with the process that we went through, knowing that there was going to be the option for councillor input into helping to guide staff and the information that they were able to give to those who were going to come up with the final decision in terms of the hearing panel. So I was relatively comfortable with that. In hindsight, I certainly hope that we take on board that in the future, not to do with this recommendation, but in the future, we do really give a lot of thought to how we engage with the community on things that are so fundamental to the way we're all going to live our lives in this city. And if I'm lucky enough to get back around the table again, I certainly will be advocating for more community, not just community meetings where we discuss things, but to get more ability for the community to really participate in the processes by which we achieve these fundamental decisions for the city. I know that all sounds a little bit blasé, but I really do think we need to move ahead with the way that this council functions in regards to that. I'm perfectly happy with what's happening today, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of the appeal process. Thank you.
Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mendick. Look, Mendick, I'm uneasy about this. I'll tell you for why. We got off to a very shaky start with Plan Change 29, and I won't go over that ground. I'll discipline myself and stay away from that. Yes, I will. Yes. Don't tempt me. I've been told. Okay. Don't tempt me. Mendick, I do support option 2. There's a perception issue here for me and for the public to grapple with. And I think it'd be right and proper to let the appellant and those that are supporting the appeal to have their time to be heard, and then we introduce this to council once that has been completed. I tell you for why. We have the central government too making changes, and I would suspect significant changes to the resource management system right now. And if we start doing, we do this one now, if there are changes and the commissioners see some opportunity to advantage the appellant, well, then we might be back again. In fact, it says it in the report that we may be back again. May. And then if we have the RMA system changed, and I think it's going to be dramatically, we'll be back again. You see, I want consistency, and I just feel let's take this one out and just wait patiently. Patiently. My goodness gracious me, the community has been very patient with us. So my concern is perception and for the appellant natural justice and those that are presenting in support of that appeal. So I'll be supporting option 2, Mendick.
I'll be very upfront and say I have a very different view to Councillor Courtney on this. It is my view that our city is crying out for the opportunity for investment, and that the processes which we are required to do by law to make plan changes are snailily slow, incredibly frustrating. And I've heard around this council table discussions around allowing intensification dating back more than a decade. And the question for us when we get to the very finish line is, do we hesitate? And I say no. We jump through that finishing tape with enthusiasm and positivity. I don't think we can pretend to be a city when we've got a rule that says you can only be 3-story through the central part. Who are we kidding? What is so evil? If there's a problem with the Rutherford Hotel that was granted through special consents, I would love to have 10 buildings, maybe 20, maybe 80 of the size of our Rutherford Hotel for the city, and I think we will be far richer and better for it. On the question of should we make decisions as a council on the basis of perception or the reality? Perception. And I'm saying no. When you are a lawmaker, when you're a decision maker, if people have got the wrong perception, well, change it. Don't go and balk and make poor decisions simply because some people might perceive it incorrectly. If there's a real problem, address it. but I would be very disappointed if we started making our decisions on perceptions. The part that was really encouraging for me through the process of Plan Change 29 was there was very little argument against allowing our central city area to go from 3 stories up to 8 stories. And here's the problem. If you're any sort of developer that is wanting to do multi-story development in the city, there is a black hole in the sense that if you're going to all the expenses of putting lifts and services in, it just ain't economic at 3 stories. And so we hugely shift the economic barrier by going to the 8. On the issue of process, actually, this has been debated for a very long time. Plan Change 29 was huge. I am more than happy to front with the public and to say that parts of Plan Change 29 were overreach and wrong, and parts of it are good, and the good parts we're going to get on with. And that is largely what we are doing here. The last part for me is that when I was Minister of Housing, several occasions, the nonsense of our rules in the central city required me to use quite draconian powers associated with special housing areas to get the development like the Betts and to get the developments like the Haven Road. And I'm proud both as a minister and a local member of parliament to enable those sorts of developments. But it is a very piecemeal approach. What we are doing here is opening the opportunity up for literally hundreds and hundreds of property owners to look at the opportunity for doing high-rise developments in these parts of the city, where, in my view, we will get a mix of apartments, we'll get the mix of investment in hospitality, in other residential buildings, and our city will be so much better for it. One of the most important things this council needs to do is to remove the barriers. It is even then, after we remove the barriers, a hard job still to attract the investment. But the first thing for us to do is to remove the barriers, and that is exactly what we are doing by approving those parts of Plan Change 29 that received widespread support. From my perspective, this cannot happen soon enough. Any other contributions? Oh, the Deputy Mayor.
Took the words out of my mouth. Added a few more. But...
The Deputy Mayor would have said it far better. If there are no further comments, does the mover wish to exercise your right of reply? No. That being the case, those that will favour say aye. Aye. Those that will say no, the item is carried. We come to the next item, 8.1, invite Mark and Martin in respect of the annual report of the Community Investment Fund.
Did you want a quick break or you want to push through?
Just colleagues, here's my intention in handling the agenda. This is the last item, but we have our valedictories and guests due in at 4 o'clock. My preference was just to plough on and nail this report and then for council to adjourn to 4 o'clock. Are councillors comfortable with that, or would they prefer to have a break? No, let's keep plugging on. We'll conclude this item of business and then adjourn till 4. 4 is yourselves, Mark and Martin.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to present this report. You recall probably when we last presented a SIP report to you, there was interest from council in not just receiving a report which provided you with a table of how allocations were made, but some context and a more strategic report. In response to this is the first of what we plan will be an annual report which covers not only how the community events and the Community Investment Fund was allocated, but some context about what's happening in the community. I'll take the report as read and would welcome your questions.
Questions, colleagues?
Happy to move it. We've received.
I've got a mover and a seconder. You happy to second, Councillor Anderson?
Oh, yeah.
So let's we'll take you as the mover, Councillor Skinner, and Councillor Anderson as a seconder. And just before we deal with that formally, we'll take some questions with the beginning from Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thanks. So it's a good report. 4.7, I was just curious, says that overall numbers, so homeless, in regards to homeless people in Housing First, it says overall numbers being lower than before Housing First started in New Zealand. I found that surprising that homelessness has gone down, not up.
Steve?
It's a difficult one to answer, and it's using information from staff at libraries, from staff within the team, and talking to local partners. Before COVID, we saw a significantly higher number of people sleeping rough in Nelson, but it was a little different, and there was less in the CBD, so they were sometimes a little bit more hidden than perhaps these days.
Any further questions, Councillor Brand?
Sorry if I missed it and it was part of Councillor Anderson's question. I just have a clarification question about the Community Investment Fund. Can the staff clarify how the day shelter initiative, particularly with the mailroom, is being communicated to those experiencing homelessness in the city centre? And the reason I'm asking is because we've had incidences recently where we've had businesses come in and trespass notices have been issued and they're due to expire. And I'd like to understand whether these individuals are being actively encouraged or supported to access the day shelter, or are there barriers to entry, and how is that being tracked to ensure that the initiative is reaching those most in need?
So this report focuses on our community investment fund, and the funding that that Mailroom have got through this is different than what you're talking about. But I can answer the question. But can you just repeat that one more time so I make sure I'm answering exactly what you need?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. It comes back to the day shelter. I want to understand and just have it clarified. Those experiencing homelessness within our city centre, recently we had some of the businesses come to us about the issue, and people have been trespassed from the city centre. Those trespasses are due to expire if they haven't already. How are those, because I just want to understand how the individuals are actively being encouraged or supported to access that day shelter that was the initiative through Council and Rotary and Mailroom to provide, and are there any barriers to them accessing that during the day, or is it, and also is it the uptake, because it is referred to briefly in the report, is it being tracked or measured to ensure that the initiative is reaching those most in need? And it did touch on that, and I appreciate it's not directly part of this, but it was touched on, and I'm just aware that we've had those different concerns and things, but this was quite an active, positive approach and collaborative project that was put in place.
Firstly, the homelessness and antisocial behaviour are quite different. So people who might have been trespassed from a particular shop or premises may not be homeless, just so that that's clear. And as far as access to Mailroom, I think, and to Whare Haumaru, which is the amazing project that Council invested in, that was finished off by the combined Rotaries of Nelson. It's really well used. And you can't make someone access a service, but I'm pretty sure they do a pretty amazing bacon and eggs breakfast, which is apparently extremely popular. And people do use it regularly. And the reason why we were really interested in having that facility there was because some people didn't have the basics they needed to survive, because they just were living without adequate shelter. But the reason why it was there is because of all the wraparound services. So you might come in because you need a shower or because you need your clothes washed, but actually you have an opportunity to talk about some of the things that are going on, and that's where Mailroom really excel.
Thank you. My question is, in administering these grants, there's a huge dilemma for council as to where we are backfilling for government that has core responsibilities in areas like education, health, social services, and they spend in our city 10 times as much as what we do. How, in considering the grants, do you try and focus on what you see as council responsibilities as compared with government responsibilities? How do you get that lens to make that decision as to, we want our community to be strong, but we don't want to be bailing out where the government is not meeting its responsibilities in areas like health and education?
Thanks for that, through the chair. So that's defined in two ways. It's defined through the guidelines, which sit with the external panel, which reference our current activity management plan. What that says is that council's role is to facilitate and to plug gaps and to support community groups. We don't provide a service to the general public. What we do is we strengthen community groups. We're minnows, exactly as you say, when it comes to funding and resource, but there are things that council can do that other parts of government and agencies find difficult. And the community will often come to us and say, hey, look, we just need $10,000 or $2,000 or the team to facilitate something that would enable this group, and this group to provide a better service. And that's where our independent community panel focus. They're fully independent from council. They do an amazing job. They're very conscious of those priorities, and the feedback from both the agencies and the recipients of the grants has been overwhelmingly positive. We get very little pushback, even though that fund is so stretched and the need is so big.
Any other questions? Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, gentlemen, for the work you're doing in this very important area. I do need to be reassured, though, that the grants that are given, that there is a watchful eye, a watching brief over them to see that the grants are being actually used for the purpose they claim to be going to be used for, please.
Thank you for that, through the chair. So as part of that, any organisation that receives a significant grant via the strategic grants, we assign a relationship manager. What their role is to meet regularly. The practice is at least every 6 months. However, it's very often a lot, depending on what the organisation is doing. Council also receives accountability reports on a regular basis. We review each of those accountability reports to make sure that the outcomes are being achieved and the money, the Ratepayer Fund, has been spent appropriately before we approve any further funding being released. Where there are concerns, we take them up directly with the organisations concerned. Would also like to point out that a lot of the grants that are made in year 2 and year 3 are small grants. They're typically around $5,000, but they enable groups to do quite powerful work. So the accountability for that is reduced when it's only $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 or $5,000.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Rainey.
I need to signal that I'll need to abstain from this. Well, that's only a noting.
It's only a noting report. Are you a trustee on one of the organisations?
No, but my company does supply equipment to some of the things that are outlined in the event part of it.
I think we'll err on the side of caution, and
I'll just
I'll ask the governance team to note that Councillor Rainey abstained. Okay, on that basis, the motion has been moved. I understood by Councillor Sanson and Anderson. If there's no debate, then I'll put resolutions 1 to 3 in accepting the annual report for the Community Investment Fund. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. That is carried. What I'm going to do is, there is a number of guests that have been invited for the events, in which we farewell 3 of our retiring councillors. So I'm simply going to adjourn the meeting to 4 p.m. Go enjoy a coffee or some social time, or prepare for one of your campaign meetings. I'll do my preparation notes for my street corner meeting at 5:30. Sorry? No glasses of bubbles, Councillor Sanson, until after we've heard your eruditing valedictory speech. Councillors adjourned until 4 p.m. Thank you very much.